All right, hopefully everybody is doing okay. If not, hope the Lord blesses you. So I decided to make a video specifically about this little Hickster Black Label. Just to talk for just a few minutes about it. Some of you all, this may not get very many views, I don't know, but I'm just going to tell you a little bit about my experience with it. I've been fishing with it for over a year now, and just my impressions about it. I know you've seen a lot of videos of me using it, or several videos, maybe not a lot, but several videos, and I've talked about how it's been my favorite here lately. So I want to just talk to you a little bit about it. First thing I'm going to tell you is, so years ago, you've heard me say it before, I used to throw spinnerbait and jig 90% of the time. If it got a real slow day, I'd pull out a shaky head and I drug it, and I would do okay. One day, I decided that I was going to start throwing crankbaits, and I started throwing a little square bill that was famous at the time. Everybody had one, and it did really good. And one of the claims that little square bill had is why it worked so good was because that little plastic square bill moved just like balsa baits. And the claim that everybody kept talking about was, and I heard it from all kinds of people, you heard it on TV back then, you heard it from everybody. They talked about how good it was because it was balsa. The balsa baits, whenever you threw them, wouldn't last. They would bang against the rocks, they would shatter, and all this other stuff. And I kind of did the same as everybody else. I used that plastic square bills, the only thing I bought for a lot of years, and I caught fish on them. But there's always a time of year that I never did do any good, and it was the winter time. Well, here recently, in the last couple of years, I've been blessed to have a boat, and the Lord gave me that boat. And ever since I decided the first winter, I was like, man, I'm going to try to go a little bit during the winter. I don't ever do very good between the months of late November till about sometime in April and March. That's usually when I used to pick up and start catching fish again. I said, I'm really going to try my best to do a little better. And I was like, one of the things that I'm going to try my best to do is, and this was year before last, I'm going to try throwing balsa crankbaits because I've always heard they were so good. And the most popular one that I threw was one that everybody throws, is a DT6. And that year I noticed a huge difference during the winter in me catching fish. Cumberland, it didn't matter where I went, that little DT6, I caught a lot of fish on it. They weren't very big, but they were nice fish. And it wasn't like it was loading a boat. But I'm like, I made myself one winter strictly use that DT6. And I thought, wow. Well, as I started using the DT6 more, I realized that it's not completely balsa. There's actually a little bit of plastic inside there. There's BBs in it. I mean, it's not quite 100% balsa. It catches fish. I'm not knocking it. It does. But what happened to me was I had a buddy of mine that he does a lot of trading, and he happened to have several little balsa baits. Had a little box of them, 6, 7 of them in it that he picked up from somebody else. And some of you are going to be like, wow, as soon as you hear this, but he had a few of those little baits, and I said, hey, he said, I've got some of these baits I'm trying to sell. He said, do you want to buy some? And I said, let me see them. So I picked them up, and I was like, how much you want for these? And I had been watching videos. Several people talk about different balsa baits that were good, that were handmade. And one of them happened to be this little bait right here. This is the Black Label Hickster, a little magic color. And I bought it for $7 a piece. There was 3 or 4 different ones in that little box. It had I think it was a couple little peanuts. It had this. It had a little a square bill one. I think it was one of the wrecks. At the time, I didn't even know what a wreck was. But it had them in there. And I went out to a little local lake that I have that's pretty good with crankbaits. And it was in the early fall, if I remember right. And I decided, you know what, it's kind of windy today. That's the bait that I'm going to start out early in the morning. Well, little did I know that day, which I have it on video, you'll see the video in the balsa. You can actually go to the Black Label one, and you'll see in the picture on the video that this right here, this color, is on that video. I absolutely wear the bass out that day on this little bait, on a lake that is probably one of the most high pressure lakes in the little town where I like to go fishing. I was amazed. And you see that in the video, but I actually lost my biggest fish that day on this bait because I turned around and switched the hooks, because the hooks were kind of old, the ones that I had on this bait. Now, I'm going to show you something about this, and I hope I can get this on video. I've caught, and it's over a year easily now. I've caught so many fish. Now, I don't know who owned this. This wasn't brand new when I got it, so somebody else had fished it. It started cracking on me towards the end, and this is the only one I have in this color, but I want you to see this. See how this is kind of, see if I can get it to zoom in. See how this is kind of rough, and it has that little right there? That's epoxy that I put on it myself, 2-part epoxy. I put that 2-part epoxy on that bait so that I could continue using it. You can barely see there's got some cracks on that tail end. So that I could continue to use that little bait, because I didn't know where I could get any more of these. And I'm like, man, I've only got one of those. And I'm absolutely catching fish every time I go out on this, all these different lakes. And man, I've got to find a way where I can get these. Well, finally I went online and I started finding out a little bit more about who makes them, which is Cliff Pace. And started learning more about Cliff Pace, started learning more about what he done. Because I had run into a couple of balsa baits, and that's the thing about a DT6. DT6, you can throw it a mile, easy to cast. A lot of the other balsa baits you come across that are really good, they're handmade, you about have to throw them on a spinning rod. These I did not. These I liked because I could throw them even on a windy day. They're 5/16, but they cast great in the wind. Well, the more I started learning about Cliff's handmade baits, and look, I don't get paid for this. Okay, I'm just going to tell you right now, the videos you see me make, nobody pays me to make those videos. Every now and then they'll give me a rod or something. Hey, I want you to use this rod. I want you to make a video. And I have done that once or twice. But nobody gives me money for making these. I'm telling you the honest truth from me using them, okay? I was amazed and blown away at this little bait right here because of the way it cast, because of the movement that it had. Now, most people will buy, in the winter, they'll talk about a shad wrap. And I threw the shad wrap all last winter on a spinning rod that was made for it. And what wore me out was I don't like cranking with the spinning rod. But I'm gonna tell you what it did teach me. It taught me that little technique that I've told you all about in one of these other little videos where I'm catching smallmouth on them, about that pull it, reel it, pull it a little bit. It taught me how to do that, and it changed the action, because what it lets it do is you throw that bait out and you reel it back to you, and you reel it a little bit and it stops, and you reel a little bit and it stops. And the way these are weighted, they don't pop back up like a wreck does, or like a lot of your other fatter style. So because these are thinner, they actually slowly rise up, which is awesome when you're fishing in cold water. Yes, they have a tight wiggling action, but it's not as tight as a shad wrap. But it also has that little bit of vibration to it. The difference is, in these, in your DT6, I would dare just about anybody to take one of these little baits right here, one of these little Hicksters, Black Label Hicksters. And if you're that guy that likes to throw a DT6, I would challenge you to get one of these. And after you went down the bank with the DT6, go back behind it with this little bait right here. I'll be surprised if you don't pick up more fish with this right here. I'm not saying you're going to outfish the DT6, but there probably is going to be days that you're going to, because this doesn't have any rattles in it. This is as silent as you get. When you sit there and you twitch this, the wiggling action that it has is amazing. It does have vibration to it, but it's not a vibration, like I said, like it's not a wiggle wart. It's not a rock crawler. It doesn't have that type of vibration. But you can tell when you're reeling this bait when it's vibrating and when it stops. The one thing I realized about the Shad Rap is you can't tell when that bait isn't vibrating. All you know is that you're reeling it to you because you feel a little bit of pressure on your rod tip. What does that mean? That means that when you get into water that is crystal clear, maybe this isn't the right color, but this color here I've used several times, okay? This here is this Kamikaze. There's actually a video on that I have that playlist set up that I catch 2 at one time in fairly clear water with this little bait right here at another little lake. This one here is the Plemons. Caught 2 at one time with this one. This is what I was telling the other day about when I was talking about this bait. It's got a little bit brighter, but the water was a little bit dingier that day. So that's the difference. You say, well, why in the world do you have so many colors? You know, here's the one that I caught, that smallmouth. This is a River Brim, I think is what it's called. You say, well, man, that's a lot of different colors. Well, the difference is this is one of the few baits that I've run across that the color of the water doesn't really affect whether this bait works or not. The only thing you have to do is change just a little bit the shade of the colors that you're using. So when this bait is moving through the water, the truth is that since it has this side-to-side action that's fairly tight, which means that it doesn't have a real wide this way. It does have a vibration, okay, but it doesn't have a real wide side-to-side. It's very unique in the way that this little bait acts, and it has no rattles. Most of the time, the colors that you see on here, a lot of people don't realize this. These colors, as this bait is moving, as fast as it's going, you're getting flashes of those colors. So even this right here, as bold as you might say, it's got a copper back to it, and then it's got these chartreuse belly, and you think, man, that's just so bright. You'd be surprised in the water when you're reeling it. Plus, even where I was fishing at Cumberland with this one right here, you'd be surprised because of the size and the way that this bait wiggles. It wasn't an overpowering light bulb. Now, I'm not going to suggest for you to throw this in water that you can see 8 foot deep. You may not do very well at this after sun comes up, okay? But I am going to tell you that this little bait right here, I've been surprised at how much clearer the water is when I use this color. This one here is called the Kamikaze, if I remember right. It's got, and you say, well, man, those colors, I'm telling you, you need to see this thing in clear water. When you start seeing it coming through the water, it looks so much like a minnow, it's unreal. And that is something that with a crankbait, you just don't find a lot. Yes, you can buy little plastic ones, and they do fairly well. But I'm telling you, it has surprised me at how many times during the year I'll pick one of these up, to where the point is that I just about have one of these tied up 90% of the time anymore. And then the one thing that I was kind of wondering about, which this year I finally grabbed a hold of some of them, I decided to get some of these because I don't know that they've always been available, but I just noticed them here lately, is now we have, which we basically have right here, this one goes to about 4 to 5 feet because I run it on about 12-pound line now. I've run this on 15-pound test. And most of the fish you see me catch with them, that's what I've used it with. This year has been the first time that I've thrown this on 12. Fluorocarbon. Just red label, cigar fluorocarbon, nothing fancy. And this little bait right here has done wonders. But this year what I did, and you saw me make a little video not too long ago on this little bait right here. This one here is a spring tiger. It's got a little brown back, some stripes on it, and some chartreuse on the bottom. It's fairly bright bait as well, but like I said, the water was a little bit dingier back there where I was fishing, just because we've had rain here lately. But this one here is called the MR because it has a little bit longer lip. Same body style, okay? It is just a little bit heavier. It feels a little bit heavier. And then this right here has a little bit longer lip, you can see. Whereas this gets to about 5 feet. This one out here in that 12-pound test, I was hitting 7 and 8 feet with this. And it's still got that lip on it to where I don't have to worry about it banging around on those rocks, which I wouldn't grind it in the rocks, don't get me wrong. But it was a little bit easier to take this little bait and come through the cover and things with it, to where that's something that in the wintertime I try to do still. I'm not trying to grind it into it. You hear me talk about that a lot. All I'm trying to do is get it to tick here and there, because I want this little bait to tick those little branches and little things in the water, because even in the cold water, that reaction bite you can still get out of those fish. Sometimes that's the only way you can get a bite of them, is a reaction bite. But you don't really want a reaction bite that when it hits, it goes, you know, bounces all over the place. Very rarely you're gonna get a bite that way. But if you reel this down and it happens to tick and change course or turn sideways, you'll still get a bite, or I have at least, especially in a lot of them brush piles, and even in the rocks. I don't want this to sit there and grind all the way back on those rocks, but I do want it to come through like chunk rock, and I want it to bounce, and I reel and stop, and give the fish a chance to attack this. In the summertime though, you take this same little bait on a 63 reel, throw it out, bring it right back to you. I don't stop very much with it, and they just absolutely drill it. But one thing that I noticed, and I believe, if I remember right, the peanut was the first one I ever had a bass do that. I've caught a lot of fish over the years on crankbaits, but the peanut, the Black Label peanut, was the first bait that I ever noticed this. They would just about swallow the crankbait. And I'm like, that's interesting, that I've heard and seen a lot of videos of people talk about that, but never had it happen to me, as much as I've thrown crankbaits. These little Hicksters, I've had them do it to them too. You've seen it on the videos, to where sometimes you'll see me get it in and you'll see me talk about it, and you're like, well, when I see it, half the bait's out. Well, by the time you get it to the boat, you fight the fish, you jumps once or twice, it comes out a little further. But I'm telling you, like I said, I have no reason to lie about it. When you get those fish up close to the boat, you can't hardly see this crankbait. But after he jumps a few times and it tries to work its way out, then you have about that much of it that's showing. That's pretty impressive on a crankbait. You know, I'll tell you something else. I'm not telling anybody to take these little baits and go throw them against rocks to see how long they'd last. But I'm not a perfect caster. And I have hit a couple rocks with these, and I've went to cast and smacked the trolling motor a couple times, and I thought, well, there it is. And I've picked that thing up, and I'm like, wow, that thing is still don't have a scratch on it. And it has blown my mind, because I'm like, man, if I'd have done that to some of my other crankbaits, they'd have done lost the lip, it'd have been shattered. I've got a few DT6s that look like they've been to war. Now these have little scratches and stuff on them, but I've caught several fish on some of these, and I'm gonna tell you what, they still, I can see the scratches on the surface of them. They're so small that I can't really show you on video to make a difference. But I've had some of these for over a year already, and I've used them several times. Like I said, this one here, the only reason that I put that 2-part epoxy on that is because at the time, I didn't know where else to get these. Like, nobody around where I was at sold them. So I finally found one tackle shop that's fairly close that carries them. So I go there every now and then, and I'll pick a couple of them up when I do go there. But then I started finding them online. You could buy them there, or you could go to that woodcountrybait.com, if I remember right. They sell them on there too. And I'm telling you what, you sit there and you say, well, and I know a lot of you think the same thing. You say, man, $18 for a crankbait, my goodness, that's a lot, and it is. I get it. $18 is a lot for crankbait. $20 is a lot for crankbait. But I'm gonna tell you what, a lot of us spend a lot of money on a lot of stuff that is sitting in our garage that we haven't even took fishing with us since the first day we caught something on it. I'm telling you, I'm impressed with these. These flat out catch fish. If you just throw a crankbait once in a blue moon, may not mean a big deal to you. But to me, being able to catch fish on a crankbait in the summer, in the fall, in the winter, and I'm talking about in cold water. I was 50 degrees and I was catching them on this the other day. Nice smallmouth. There's not very many baits you can do that with. There's not very many baits that bass are going to hit and swallow. I mean, a lot of times it's side of their face or something like that. So I'm pretty impressed with it, and that's why you see me fishing a lot with them. That's why you hear me say that, look, I like whatever the bass are biting at the time. But I'm telling you what, I'm impressed with this little crankbait right here. It's castable. It's fun to fish. It moves good in the water. It looks real. Obviously, the bass love them. You need to, if you're thinking about buying, I'd love to get a hold of some of the other Zoom baits from years ago. I wished I'd have bought them back then, but it didn't. These right here are a lot of times Cliff's versions of a lot of those. And I've bought them just wondering. I wonder how those baits were. And I'm telling you what, there's not been one that I haven't caught fish on yet. There's some that I'm fairly new at using, that I'm trying to get used and put in different situations. But this right here, this Hickster, is one that I'm telling you, it passes the test for all year long. If I had a lot of people in their box right now, like I said, I have a DT6 in their box, and that's their number one most dependable crankbait, I would put this one right here right up against it. You give me the same color that you're fishing, and me and you both fish, and I bet that day I can have just as much fun as you do with that one. You say, well, why don't I just keep throwing my other one? You can keep throwing it all you want to, but I'm telling you that there's situations where no rattle makes a big difference, because I've seen it. I put them head to head several times, and I've been very impressed. But anyway, and it's just kind of long, and like I said, a lot of people may not even watch this, but to some of you that are interested, maybe this make you think twice about it. Maybe hopefully something that I've mentioned will trigger something to help you catch more fish. But that's my take on the Hickster. Anybody has any questions about it, I'll put down below the link in the comments. I'll pin it to the top of the comments there to where you can order these online. And I promise you, there's all kinds of colors or signature series versions of these. Like I said, this right here, the MR, is the same thing, just a little bit deeper. But I'm telling you what, I've caught them on this in the back of the pockets, and I've caught them on this on my way to the back of the pocket. So either one of these are great. They just go different depths. Anyway, enough of me rambling on and talking. Hopefully that'll help you. Hopefully you'll kind of get the gist of what I'm trying to say. God bless y'all. Hope everybody has a good Christmas. Hopefully this videos help. Thank you everybody that shares the videos. Thank you everybody that watches them. Thank you everybody that makes the comments, and anybody that needs anything, you can more welcome to message me. I'll try my best to help you. Don't forget, Jesus loves you. Y'all have a great day.